Welcome to the return of the weekend video. Today is Saturday the 12th of September and I'm coming at you from an undisclosed location, which is why I don't have my usual trusty handheld mic with me. I'm feeling very re-energized, very refocused, very positive and very much ready to get back on the battlefield. Not that I ever really get off of it. But this wasn't the case in the early part of this week when I succumbed to an extreme bout of stress and anxiety, which manifested itself physically in the form of irritable bowel syndrome. Very uncomfortable. Anyone that's ever suffered from IBS will know what that's all about. So it was very much a case of man down. And I put out a call on Facebook for any of my friends who were viewing the message that could get involved in remote healing of a natural, holistic nature. If they felt they could help, I invited them to get in touch. And I was very much touched by the response, overwhelmed by messages of assistance, mainly from females, it has to be said. The ladies seem to be really stepping up when it comes to offering this type of healing. They seem to be very naturally attuned to it. So I had a couple of healing sessions done remotely from a couple of very sympathetic people this week, and many others, as I say, reached out with their offers of help. And I'm happy to say that now the discomfort and all the pain is gone. I've spent the last 3 nights sleeping for at least 8 hours unbroken. 8 hours of continuous sleep, which is extremely rare for me. My sleep patterns, my body clock has been screwed up for years, largely as a result of a couple of decades of DJing and then working all kinds of ridiculous hours in my last day job. So it's a real event for me to be able to sleep throughout the night continuously, and I've had 3 of those in a row now. So I'm feeling very much ready to get back into things and feeling good and positive about everything right now. I have good days and I have bad days, as everyone knows, the same as anyone else. And I'm very open and honest about those on these videos, but I'm feeling good about where things are at right now. And this week really made me reflect on how we all are able to support each other in different ways as we go about doing the work, the right action that we feel we need to put into the world. So there are people like me who are pretty good at putting together radio shows and podcasts, videos of this nature, writing books, doing live talks, presenting information in that way. There will be many other people who would tell you that they couldn't write a book to save their lives, and the idea of going up on a public stage and addressing a crowd terrifies them. But these people have other skills and other talents to offer. They may well be very adept at healing. They may well be very spiritually attuned, and they can offer that kind of support to the truth warriors out there on the field. They're the backup team, if you like, offering the support that's needed when we succumb to the pressures and the stresses of what it is that we do. And it just made me reflect on that this week, how we are able to all interact with each other, support each other, and bring our different skills and talents to the table in a team-like environment with unity. And following on from my message of last week's video, unity and strength in numbers is what we really need so much right now in these times. Divided we fall, which was the title of last weekend's video. There will be many who don't place a lot of stock in the idea of natural healing, particularly when it comes to being done remotely. These people would be very much rooted in the 5 sense, 3D, real world reality in which we find ourselves. Then you'll have people on the other side of the fence who are very much into spiritual, metaphysical practices and ideas, and they don't spend too much time looking at the nuts and bolts, the fine detail of the conspiracy world and looking at all the various machinations done on a geopolitical level. They would consider themselves outside of that vibrationally. I feel the truth is that we need to unite these 2 aspects and these 2 different concepts, and we certainly need to look at the fine detail of what's being done to us in this physical reality, but we need to keep in mind that what we're experiencing goes way beyond the apparent 5 sense 3D world, and there is absolutely interplay with the spiritual world. There are other metaphysical concepts outside of our everyday experiences which are going on here. It's going to be more of that as we progress in this video. To be honest with you, I've always been someone who is more grounded in the conspiracy side of things, in real world matters, but I absolutely recognise that there is a spirit world. I absolutely recognise and accept that there are other concepts at play here, other expressions of reality, other dimensions which are working in conjunction with the one which we experience every day. And I feel the key to navigating this madness is to keep that in mind and keep a foot in each camp, as I try to do. Well, the COVID-19 UK Truth Tour continued this week, and I was happy to be a part of the event as it rolled through Oxford on Thursday in Bond Square. Big shout to Ben, Emlyn Jones in attendance there. Big shout to Jason, the tour bus crew, everyone that's been out on the road. Oxford is a notoriously difficult market to crack, trust me. It's where I was born, I lived around that area for many years, and people in Oxford tend to be very establishment-minded. It is, of course, the elite breeding ground where establishment types go to get their system indoctrination. And that certainly showed in some of the people that were coming up and having conversations with those of us on the tour. They were very much parroting the official Oxford University, BBC, Wikipedia official version of everything, and it really took some getting through to some of them. A couple of them were beyond hope, beyond all salvation. There was no getting through to them. But I think we did influence a few people with what we had to say about the masks and the madness behind them and how they don't actually work and how ridiculous it is that they were introduced so late in the game when apparently the virus figures were already on the wane. None of it makes any sense, of course, and we now have more ridiculous rulings coming out of the UK with what's being referred to as the Rule of Six. So this was announced by Boris Johnson on the 9th of September. The dates are never an accident. There's always something to be learnt from the dates of these announcements. So it's the 9th of the 9th, 9-9, two inverted sixes to go along with the Rule of Six. These people are so transparent. And I do have to wonder whether this new ridiculous piece of, I'd like to call it law, but of course it isn't, has been directly inspired by the protest events and the various rallies and demos that have been taking place throughout the UK in recent weeks. We had the big one in Trafalgar Square in London a couple of weeks ago. There have been many protests of a similar nature in towns and cities up and down the UK, not to mention all the stop-off points on the COVID-19 Truth Tour. So it's very interesting timing that we now get told that we can't gather socially in groups of more than 6. Otherwise the virus will have you. You know what will happen. I mean, it's okay to go to a pub where there will be 20 groups of 6, but the minute a 7th person comes to that table, it's going to get you. It's very interested to be approached in London on the Trafalgar Square event by several people actually who came up to me and went, "Hey Mark, people are calling it the swooshy swooshy." I think this has really caught on. And this one lady had her little boy in his pushchair, and she said, "Now, what do you want to do to Mark?" And the little boy went like this, and she went, "And the noise, and the noise." So the boy went. I mean, it just highlights how ridiculous this whole thing is, and how arbitrary the laws are, so-called laws, how they make absolutely no sense. This is what we were trying to get through to people on the tour. So the Rule of Six now is designed to prevent large social gatherings. It will still be okay for kids to be in the classroom with 25 other kids. It will still be okay for students to be in university. It will still be okay to go to the pub. It will still be okay to go to the supermarket. But you can't gather in your garden or in somebody's house in groups of more than 6, apparently. I'm sure everyone who was planning to attend the big protest events in London at the end of this month, Trafalgar Square on the 26th and Hyde Park on the 27th, will be obeying these new regulations to the letter. So we had this announcement from Johnson, though of course it's not really coming from him because Johnson is just a pathetic, here today, gone tomorrow puppet, as is Hancock, less of the Han. And isn't it interesting that we've got Boris Johnson, Matt Hancock and Cressida Dick, the chief of the Metropolitan Police, very much running this whole narrative in the UK. So Johnson, Hancock and Dick. Do you think they're trying to tell us something about the nature of these people? Of course, the real decrees are coming from on high, from the overlords, from the taskmasters, from the real controllers of this narrative, and it's fed down through minions like Johnson and the ridiculous, weak and pathetic Hancock. I mean, does anyone take Matt Hancock seriously? Even Mrs. Hancock. Come on. Boris Johnson, I see, put a post on his Facebook page in the week, about this new trendy, catchy phrase that he's got. What is it? Face, space. I can't remember what it is. The soul to soul one from back in the day was much better. What was it? A smiling face, a thumping bass for a loving race. Now that's a slogan, that's a motto. But I was delighted to see when I went on Boris Johnson's post that he was getting absolutely savaged by people carpet bombing his page with truth and countering the transparent, pathetic, ridiculous government line on all this. It really was inspiring to see how many people have twigged that this whole thing is a scamdemic. How many people have twigged that the government is lying to us all the time, and nothing that they say makes any sense. It's not designed to make any sense. So I'm going to put the link to this Facebook thread in the notes below. If anyone fancies joining in and letting Boris Johnson know, if he gets to see it, at least his moderators will. I suspect they can't delete the comments quick enough. Let them know how you feel about what they're telling you in terms of how you're supposed to live your life in the year 2020. I feel that would be a useful exercise to do. I see also this week Miles Mathis chimed in with a hit piece savaging David Icke, Vernon Coleman and Piers Corbyn. So you can get this from Miles Mathis' regular site, mileswmathis.com. I'll put the link to this PDF in the notes below as well, should you wish to have a look at this article for research purposes. So he's going in on David Icke, who's always an easy target, and he's been called a shill and an insider and controlled opposition since Adam and Eve were a young boy and girl. But when it comes to Piers Corbyn, you don't often hear him called out in the same way, but Mathis has put together a loose kind of argument to suggest that Piers Corbyn is leading a controlled opposition exercise in all of these protests where he continually gets arrested, and then Vernon Coleman gets thrown into the mix as well. So basically these are the three individuals who seem to be having the most impact in the UK in terms of galvanising and uniting people and providing a voice for them in the midst of this ridiculous pandemic, and Miles Mathis has felt the need to go in on all of them and denounce them, rather than supporting them in what they're trying to do. As I've said before, this is not the time for petty differences, it's not the time for infighting and bitching and backstabbing, it is the time for unity against a common enemy. So it makes me very suspicious of Miles Mathis's motives, to be honest with you. I certainly have never agreed with everything he's had to say. He has raised some interesting points in some of his articles, not least the Tate Manson murders, but I certainly haven't gone along with everything he's postulated in his various essays. And I don't place any value on this one. But I mentioned the fact that he's brought it out because the timing is interesting, and it does make you wonder what the true motive may be here. You know, it might be worth asking the question, what has Miles Mathis done himself to unite and galvanise large numbers of people and get them together in unity against oppression and tyranny in the way that Piers Corbyn and David Icke have? You know, just saying. And also, if you listen to every accusation you ever heard that a certain person in the field is some kind of agent, some kind of insider, some kind of shill, you would have to conclude that in the entire truth alternative conspiracy scene, there are zero genuine researchers and speakers, and there are zero genuine groups that are coming with the right motives. I mean, I know this because I have these accusations levelled at me, and just this week there were a couple of people piping up, as they do from time to time, accusing me of being some kind of MI5 agent, some kind of Freemason, or a Satanist, or a shill, or controlled opposition of some kind or other. And while I can't be 100% sure of anyone else, I can certainly go with my best guess, with my instinct, and according to the evidence and the proofs that are available to me as to whether somebody else is genuine. One person I can be sure of is myself. I know I'm none of those things. And so I know those people accusing me of it are full of shit. They don't know what they're talking about, they've got zero evidence, zero proof, and if they're full of shit when they're talking about me, they're highly likely to be full of shit when they're talking about other people as well. So I can't place any credibility in anything they say about anyone or anything else. Just worth making that observation. Oh, the COVID insanity just gets more and more infantile and laughably pathetic. You know, now You can't sing in church. You can't sing at karaoke because the virus is all around. And the minute you open your mouth to sing, it will be in there and you'll be dead. So it's only sensible. And then you've got all these rules with masks where you go into a hotel and you have to wear it in the reception area, and if you go into the restaurant you have to wear it as you walk through the corridor, but when you get to your table you can take it off whether or not you're eating, because the virus knows the difference, leaves you alone. Then when you get up to go to the toilet, it's mask on again, and you can only take it off when you're back at your table. I mean, all of this is just an insult to the intelligence of grown adults, and that's a part of this. It's mockery. It's a satanic mockery of the ignorance of the general population as the controllers see it, and they must be loving the fact that most people are conforming with this insanity and not thinking to question it. But even in spite of that, even in spite of what we've had this week, the rule of 6, I'm feeling very positive about how this whole thing is going to play out, because for a start, the rule of 6 being introduced smacks of desperation. It smacks of panic. It smacks of a control system that knows it's losing and is desperately scrabbling around to cover its tracks and conceal all the lies. And it's like a rabbit caught in the headlights. It doesn't know which way to turn. It's a good sign. And really, as things get more and more insane every week, and the longer this whole thing drags out and the more people's lives it begins to affect, I mean, furlough scheme is going to be running out soon, and people are going to start to feel that financial pinch. And there's going to be a cold, hard reality check for many millions of people. And it can only end one way. And it's not going to end in a good way for the dark controllers. There's no way they're going to be able to see this thing through. And, so much of what they're doing ticks boxes on the Agenda 2030 tick list. All the things that they wanted to have in place by 10 years' time from now. And they seem to be trying to fast track it all 10 years ahead of time. And they're just not going to make it. They're just not going to get there. We are not going to be living in 2030 according to their vision, according to what they want to get into place, because they've shown themselves now. Too many people are asking questions. Too many people are seeing the discrepancies, the anomalies. Even though most people are going along with it, it's only a matter of time before this whole thing just really starts to run its course. They've demonstrated their true nature now, and there can be no denying what so many of us truth researchers have been saying for years about who's really running this world and about what the end game plan is. But now the genie is out of the bottle, the cat is out of the bag, the lid is off, whatever analogy you want to use, and it ain't going back anytime soon. We are not going back to the way things used to be, the way we lived in 2019, which means it can go one of two ways. It means the future plays out in the vision and in the intent of the controllers of the COVID narrative, or we, the people, the sovereign free beings of Earth, humanity, shape and mould the future in our vision, according to our will and our intent. And I'm telling you, that is what is going to happen, because the days are numbered for this whole scam. The gig is going to be up quite soon. I feel this, and I'm feeling very positive about how it's all going to play out at this particular point. It's a good thing, and better days are on the horizon. That's not to say that we take our foot off the pedal and hold back on all the efforts that we know we need to put in. We need to keep this stepped up, we need to keep raising public awareness of what's really going on, getting the information out there, pushing back against the tyranny, protesting against it, showing that we're not complying, showing that we don't consent, finding any way that we can to send that message back to the controllers to make them even more scared. So we can't let up the effort, but at the same time, if we stay focused on better times ahead and a positive, constructive result from this whole thing, we can manifest that and we can bring it about. And the more I look at it, the more it really does seem to me as if this whole narrative is very closely linked to the situation in the United States with the upcoming election on November 3rd. I mean, people will have their own thoughts about that. I'll be accused of placing value in the Q plan by making that statement. Whatever the case, we know that every year there has been a major US election, there has been a different pandemic which has come along. Whether it's the bird flu, whether it's SARS, whatever else it is, there's a long track record of a different pandemic coming along just before each American election. Now, the one we have coming up in less than 2 months is probably the most important US election since the Founding Fathers put the country into being over 200 years ago. There is so much hinged on it, and I really do feel that what's being rolled out around the world is closely linked to that event. It seems to me that the controllers just decided to plunge the entire world into this situation, so all other countries got embroiled in it, because it did tick a few extra boxes along the way and got a few other things done. But either way, we're going to know the truth of the matter very soon, because the election is less than 2 months away, and there are going to be very interesting things in the wake of it, I feel, directly after that November result. We have to wonder what the October surprise may be. The Democrats surely can't be serious about going with Creepy Joe Biden, as their candidate. Really? An old pervert paedophile with dementia that doesn't even know what country he's in, and is 78 now, before he's even taken office? So it leads me to wonder what they're going to wheel out, and whether they have another candidate in the wings to put out there in October. But either way, we're going to find out what the result is of that whole thing sooner rather than later. On that front, a lot of people have been asking me when the next show with Charlie Freak and Colleen is going to be, being that I've done 2 extremely mammoth, epic length shows with them on the subject of Q and Donald Trump. Now, I had planned to do another show with Charlie where I was going to put a whole bunch of questions that people had about that whole situation, and we were due to get a date in the diary for it. However, as some of you may have seen, Charlie and Colleen have been facing a few dramas out there in Mexico in recent days. So Colleen put a statement on Facebook just a couple of days ago, which I'll read to you now to explain what's been going on. So she said, "Hi guys, Charlie and I have fully come under attack by whatever is left of the system that is out there. Besides our power going off, they took out our internet for the last 3 days. 3 more videos were taken off of Freak Sense TV by YouTube. Facebook has told us to expect our account to be taken down at any time. We have drones flying around our home every night, and 2 nights ago someone fired 2 gunshots towards Charlie coming home from feeding the animals outside of our gate. They weren't trying to hit Charlie, but rather scare, I guess. Typically with Charlie, he didn't bat an eye and went to investigate what has happened." She says, "We are not sharing these things with you to worry about us. Don't. Charlie is fiercely strong and powerfully connected to God. But just know that without power and without internet, we cannot even upload a single video to make you aware of what is going on. Clearly, they want our voice silenced as the election approaches. We've reached out to the Q team to see if there's anything they can do to remedy this surveillance." So they do say that when you're copping the flak, you must be over the target, don't they? So I'll leave people with that thought, but it does explain the situation with Charlie Freak and Colleen, and it explains why I've not been able to do that show with him, and may not be able to now, because they've stated that they're going to be doing a question and answer session with Lokesh Rai each and every Friday on their channel, and that seems to be the only show that they're undertaking for now. So that's bringing people up to speed on that whole front. I've got a Good Vibration show coming up very soon with David Whitehead. Very much looking forward to doing that one. Going to be chatting with Dave about how people can strengthen and prepare themselves for challenging times, how they can make sure they're resilient to these threats to their psychology and maybe their physical well-being. And also we're going to be talking about what has happened to all the real men, the real males out there. This is a bit of a hobby horse of mine. You know, I feel there's been an agenda in recent years to feminize men and to suck that warrior spirit out of them, so that we don't have a kind of militia of emboldened, strengthened males standing up for the rest of society in these times and going out there on the battle line to defend rights and freedoms and do whatever needs to be done in right action. we're not seeing that. And a big part of it will be because men have been feminized. There's been estrogen leaked into the food chain and being absorbed by males through all other facets in our regular ways of life. The same thing's been happening in reverse with females absorbing testosterone. There's been a blurring of the genres, of the genders, and it's led to the situation that we have now, where we have a lot of emasculated males who aren't standing up for right action. Going to be talking with Dave Whitehead about that. Also, Dave has touched on the subject of Q and what's going on with Trump in America himself as a show host, and he, like I have, has copped a lot of flack for doing so. Not even for taking a position on it necessarily, but just for entertaining the idea and having guests on to even talk about Q. That has raised the tempers and got the knickers of various people in a twist, it seems. So we're going to be addressing that on the show that we do together. Great to be back up in Newcastle last weekend for a meetup of Truth Seekers Northeast. Big shout to Maureen, big shout to Dawn, two of the kindest souls I know, really. And Maureen is like a second mother to me, so always enjoy getting back up to Newcastle. Beautiful hospitality from the folks up there. Word also of the 100th episode of The Sound of Freedom, which I just released today. So for anyone that's not aware, this is me kind of going back to my roots as a radio DJ, and I put out this series called The Sound of Freedom, which consists of conscious message music, where the lyrics and all the sentiments of the songs just really speak to the times in which we find ourselves and really resonate with lots of people, so they tell me. So I initially started that series back in 2013, and it went out in the first instance on the ill-fated, doomed People's Voice TV network, about which the less said the better. These days I put it out on my Spreaker platform, and I've just reached the 100th episode. So a lot of people follow my speech-based output, it seems. A lot of people dig my Good Vibrations interviews. A lot of people like listening to the interviews that I do with other hosts on their podcasts and on their shows. And of course, a lot of people like watching these videos. But I've never really had that much love shown for The Sound of Freedom, being that it's music-based. And I think that may be down to the fact that many people probably just don't even realise that I do it. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes below to the 100th episode of The Sound of Freedom. If you've never heard it before, give it a go and see how this music makes you feel. See if it speaks to you. And if it does, there's an archive of 100 shows right there on the Spreaker that you can go to recap on what's gone on over these past 7 years. Really appreciate the love I have had from fans of The Sound of Freedom, but I would like to get a few more people listening to this stuff, because truly it is the only show out there of this nature that speaks to you musically. And if you're anything like me, every now and again you just have enough of listening to voices yapping, and it's just nice to get inside some music. You might not be feeling the stuff that is played on mainstream radio stations, being that it's all corporate agenda music. So this is music of an entirely different nature that does uplift and does really speak to the soul. So give it a go. What else? Some fun with numbers. Wanted to share this with you. You might have heard me talk in previous interviews about the fascinating interplay that there seems to be in my life with the universe and with numbers. And this particularly manifests itself when it comes to birth dates of members of the family. So when I take members of my immediate family and look at their birth dates, in all cases you can take two of these birth dates and add them together and come up with a third number, which is the birth date of somebody else in the family. And certain numbers just keep on cropping up. There are 12s everywhere. There are 29s everywhere. I just moved house recently, back in June, and the house number that we now find ourselves in, entirely randomly, is 29. Something occurred to me about my birthday. I see the figures of my birthday everywhere I look. I see them on car dashboards, I see them when I look at my watch, I see them on DVD counters, I see them on prices, on billboards in the street. It's always 12:05. My birthday is the 12th of May, so it's the 12th of the 5th. I see 12:05 everywhere I look. I take it as a communication from creation that I'm on the right path. Whenever I see 12:05, I know I've just got to keep going because I'm right where I need to be. And it only occurred to me the other day that if you add up 12 and 5, you get 17. And the 17th letter of the alphabet is, of course, Q, which is kind of interesting. Also, the postcode of the property in which we now live has 3 figures in it, and the 3 figures are 11-3. And it occurred to me that that is the date of the all-important American election this year, 11-3, November the 3rd. So there's an interesting one. And you can have all kinds of other fun with the 17s as well. So there was an event in my life in 1988, December 1988. It was the night of the 17th. And I foolishly, in my youth, in my stupidity of those times, I was driving back from a party late at night, having worked all day, very, very tired. It was my first car. I was 18. It was a white Mini, and I fell asleep at the wheel and turned it over. And I was very lucky to have survived because it was a pretty nasty accident. But obviously, I was meant to remain in this realm and not depart this reality on that particular date, so I stuck around. Then, 11 years later, on the 17th of December 1999, I had another accident coming back from a club late at night. This one wasn't really my fault. It was black ice on the motorway. My car hit it, no way of avoiding it. It skidded, it crashed into the barrier on the side of the road. The car was written off, but thankfully me and my friend that I was driving with were safe. But someone who wasn't as lucky that night, it turns out, was Desmond Llewellyn, who was the actor who portrayed the character of Q in the James Bond films for many years. So there's always been a Q in the Bond films. And Desmond Llewellyn was the original one. He was out on the roads that night in 1999, it turns out. And he wasn't so lucky. He was involved in an accident and subsequently he died. So I lived that night, he died. We have Q connected into that whole scenario. We have the fact that it was the 17th of December, and we have the fact that it was 1999. 9-9. Just saying, JFK Jr. is said to have died on the 16th of July 99. So we have the 2 9s, we have the same year, 9-9. JFK Jr., as anyone who's been following the Q narrative, is of course tied into that whole scenario. I'm not saying JFK Jr. is Q, I'm just saying that he has a part in that whole narrative. So now we have the expression of the 9 9s when it comes to Q and the 17, and the date on which I realised all this was the same date that Boris Johnson announced his rule of 6, which was the 9th of September, or 9-9. And that's why I call it fun with numbers, because the universe does seem to love communicating with us numerically in these fascinating, captivating ways, so long as we're alert enough to spot these messages when they're relayed to us. I love all of that. I'm going to leave you with somebody else's video. So somebody sent this to me just today, and I made the spontaneous decision to put it into the video. One of the reasons I decided to include it is because the running time of the video that I was sent was 12 minutes and 5 seconds. It was 12:05. So the minute I saw it, I knew that I had to share it. So it's from a lady called Laurie Ladd, and she's talking about the play out of experienced events from this point going forward, and how there are 2 possibilities, pretty much going back to what I was saying earlier in the video, in terms of how things are going to run. And she's taken a very positive, optimistic tone in this video, which resonates with me and is where I'm at right now, in terms of we, the people in our mass numbers, are in control now. It might not feel like it. The madness, the insanity, the tyranny is clearly getting ramped up, and it is difficult for us to deal with. But it's not a done deal. And all this stuff that's being done, as I said, is indicative of a control system that is panicking, that knows its days are numbered, and is desperately trying to stay alive. And that's what she discusses in this video, and she talks about how all the things that have been threatened, all the things that seem to be looming over us, mandatory vaccinations, illnesses coming as a result of 5G, the track and trace stuff, further losses of our freedoms, mandatory mask wearing going on forever. These are threats, but they're not guarantees. And there's no evidence that any of these things are actually going to come in. We're having them dangled over us as threats to keep us in fear, but there's nothing to state that they're actually going to come into that manifestation. That's the whole tone of her video here. I want to leave you with these words because I hope they're as inspiring and hopeful to you as they have been for me. We are going to win this. The controllers are going down. These are momentous times in history. We are privileged to be here as a part of them and to participate in them. It's all being done to keep us in a fear-based state. And earlier in the week, I experienced the stress and the anxiety which are derivatives of that fear-based emotion, and so I know how crippling and disabling that can be. And so do they. And that's why they keep dumping this stuff on us. And if we can rise above the fear, lose the fear, don't be controlled by it, then we've won. And we are going to win this. This is not going to be our reality the way the controllers want it to be. I did not manifest into this physical reality to live as a slave. My children were not born to live their lives under a tyrannical control system. It's not going to happen. I'm not having it. We're not having it. We're going to win. See you soon.
Hello everybody, happy Tuesday. I love you. Sending you a big virtual hug wherever you are on the earth plane right now. Okay, here's a message that came in. It came in late last night. I've said this message before and I need to say it again. There are two timelines that are playing out right now. There is a timeline that is in a lower state of consciousness or a lower frequency that's holding fear, chaos, stress, anxiety, control, manipulation, censorship, right? And it's getting louder and louder and louder. See it as a screen, a movie screen. There's another timeline playing out right now in this now moment that is quieter. It's quieter because we haven't been able to step into it completely yet. We're not quite sure. Is it really there? Can I really trust it? Can I really believe it? Because the fear, that consciousness, that dark consciousness is being dismantled. And as it gets dismantled, it gets louder and louder and louder and louder. Don't destroy me. Don't destroy me. Don't destroy me. I'm going to get louder and louder and louder to make you believe the illusion that I am getting bigger, that I am more powerful. And the light just keeps building over here. This is the second timeline. This is the higher timeline, higher states of consciousness, light, love, unity, freedom, choice, sovereignty, peace, calm, abundance, expansion. It's here. It's here right now. It is right here, right now. But many of us are hearing this loud stuff, right? Mandated vaccines, not going to happen. 5G towers are going to destroy humans, not going to happen. Chemtrails are going to manipulate and screw up our minds, not going to happen. Famine, we're going to not have enough food, not going to happen, right? All of these stories, there's going to be 10 days of blackout, not going to happen, right? There's going to be a civil war, not going to happen. But this is what the screen is telling us, okay? And we're watching it unravel. It's absolutely, unequivocally happening. But there is another timeline that is absolutely unequivocally happening as well. And our job as light workers, as way showers, as warriors of light, as starseeds, is to focus on this, regardless of how loud that volume gets turned up on that screen. So here's what my guides wanted me to share with you. First, there are beings of light like yourself, but are not in physical form. Beings of light that are on the earth plane, moving around with us right now as energetic beings, dismantling that movie screen. And they are working with and assisting humans that have the role of dismantling that consciousness. So the amount of power and light that is working on the behalf of this timeline over here, this higher timeline, would blow our minds. But because it is sort of behind the scenes, right? First of all, the media is not telling us any of this. And it is much more of an energetic dismantling that we don't see it. It's hard for us to believe it. And because this dark consciousness that we've been in for so long is so dark, that it is being dismantled in a way that won't harm our psyche. It won't harm it won't bring us into a psychotic state. Okay, so we're not necessarily seeing the dismantling all of the dismantling of this really dark consciousness right now. What we are seeing is the physicality of this dark consciousness, right? So we're being told these things, we're being shown these things, we're being stuck inside of our houses. All of these things are happening. That's the screen playing out. There is another screen, and this is what we need to pay attention to. There are beings that are on the earth plane walking as light that we can't see, that are literally dismantling that entire timeline. I promise you, it's an abso-freaking-lutely loot thing. Abso-freaking-lutely loot thing. It's absolute. So they need you to start to hold this. Are we going to all of a sudden be poisoned by food, right? Somebody just sent me some video. That timeline would play out if we didn't shift the frequency of the collective. We are shifting the frequency of the collective. That timeline is not going to play out, but that screen is going to be up there until we as a collective are able to literally shift the train onto the other track and move down this path of the higher timeline. How do we do that? We stay focused on it. So hold up in your house. You have a curfew. Stay focused on this other timeline. That this massive upheaval and uprest that you're seeing right now is not going to win. It's not going to play out. And you have a choice in believing that. You have a choice. You have a choice in what you're going to believe in. So here's two analogies that you can think about, okay? The first analogy is, imagine that it's 4th of July and you have a dog in your house. When dogs experience the 4th of July and the firecrackers going off, they freak out, right? They run into the bathroom, they jump in the tub, they're shaking, right? All they know is that in this now moment, they are not safe. There's loud noises going off, they can hear it, they feel super uncomfortable, right? They're shaking, and you do everything you can to let them know this is going to pass, this is going to pass, this is going to pass. Yes, they're loud. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's happening, but I promise you it passes and you will be safe. That is 1000% the message right now. Yes, it's happening. Yes, that screen's there. Yes, they're going to tell you all kinds of crazy stuff that's happening. What's your choice, right? The dog is in such a present moment state that it's just trying to get through the firecrackers. You understand this. So stay focused on that higher timeline. The firecrackers stop. The firecrackers don't continue on and on and on, no matter how loud and how big they get. The second analogy they want you to remember is that there are millions upon millions of human bodies like you and me that are light workers, way showers, warriors of light, starseeds, on top of the actual light beings that are on the earth plane right now making an impact. And we are all in a line, huge line across the entire earth. And we are all moving forward, walking towards that really dark screen. And you can make any storyline you want about that dark screen, right? Any narrative you want. Vaccines, 5G, civil war, whatever you want to do, right? Whatever. Dark night of the soul, where the whole planet goes dark for 10 days, whatever you want to think about, whatever you've been told. But here we are, massive line, millions of light workers, way showers, warriors of light, they call us, holding a very high frequency. Whether you believe this or not, you are. And we are all moving towards that screen. And that screen doesn't go away just because we get closer to it. What happens is it gets louder as we get closer because we're shining more light and more light and more light. And we have to be courageous as we walk towards that screen. We have to be courageous warriors of light as we continue to move closer and closer to that screen that we are literally dismantling. Stuck in your house, we're getting closer to the screen. Mandated vaccines, we're getting closer to the screen. 5G towers, we're getting closer to the screen. We're not going to have any food in a couple months, we're getting closer to the screen. You can't do anything to me. Go ahead, try it. We are massive warriors of light. We are dismantling it. That's the mentality. Yes, it sucks. Yes, it's hard. Yes, Yes, yes to everything you're feeling. And you're still a warrior of light on this line, moving towards that screen in order to dismantle it. And the more courageous we are in looking at it, but recognizing that we're standing on this other timeline. So you're looking at it, you're like, oh yeah, you're loud, you're obnoxious. You're not gonna trick me anymore because there's this timeline right here that I'm standing in. And this is the timeline that I'm choosing to focus on, no matter what you say. Because I know that not only am I, but millions of other warriors of light are standing here, shining the light, walking forward towards it, not letting it control me anymore, not letting it have control over me, telling me that I need to be afraid of something, telling me that this is going to happen. No more. I am taking back my power. I'm taking back my sovereignty. I'm taking back my choice. I'm choosing another timeline. I'm choosing to remember that even if I can't see it, there are beings of light that are dismantling you no matter what. And just like the firecrackers on 4th of July, this will not win. It will not play out. It will not play out. And as we get closer and closer as warriors of light, it dissolves and dissolves but it will not dissolve without a fight. It's going to get louder and louder and louder. So, and every single continent on this earth plane is going to go through their own massive shifts. There is dark, dark consciousness on every continent. Underneath the continent, on top of the continent. And we have to dismantle it. So we have to stand on that continent as warriors of light around the entire earth and shine our light on the dark that is literally coming up from underground, physically underground, those underground tunnels all over the world, and on top that are all around us, on top of the continent, on top of the planet, standing there. And I want you to remember that that we win, that the light freaking wins, that this is a screen that has controlled us for thousands of years, and it's not going to win. It's only going to get louder because it's afraid. Please remember it like the 4th of July firecrackers and the dog. Please remember that you are standing in a line of millions upon millions upon millions of beings and humans. That even though you may not see it, I can promise you there is work being done by higher dimensional light beings and humans that you can't see, that you don't know, that are dismantling that from behind the scenes. I promise you. There will come another now moment where all of this will be revealed to you, all of it. But right now, we have to trust. We have to choose. We have to remember. And one last thing before you go. There is a song I encourage you to listen to when you're in fear, when you are forced to be stuck in your house, when you are watching chaos and disruption, when you are forced to wear a mask. Play this song. Find it on Spotify. The song is called Where the Heart Is. And the artist is Brett, B-R-E-T-T, Eldredge, E-L-D-R-E-D-G-E. Yeah, I'll post it down below. If you listen to this song in the midst of fear, in the midst of being forced to wear that mask, in the midst of being forced to stay inside your house, in the midst of evil coming at you or dark coming at you, I promise you, you'll find yourself in a higher state of consciousness, raising your hands, singing, dancing, and just being able to move through it. Try it. Where the Heart Is, Brett Eldredge. I love you. Remember the 2 timelines. Make a choice. I promise you, this old timeline does not win. I love you.